Good morning. Do you ever feel like you're just waiting and waiting and waiting? Well, that's what we're looking at today from the story of Noah. Hope everyone's had a wonderful week. It's good to have you with us. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, if you will give me a quick hello in the chat, just let me know it's working. Let me know you can hear me. Good morning, Christy. Hopefully I've got everything working this week. Seems like not every week, but nearly every week there's something going on, either audio or video. Good morning, Carol. Good morning, Bridget. All right. Thanks for letting me know y'all are here. It's good to see y'all on this morning. Hope you've enjoyed this week, even with all the rain. We've definitely had a lot of rain. I was amazed yesterday looking at some of the pictures. Just most of what I saw was from Tuscaloosa. I'm not sure where else it might have been flooding, but just so much water in the streets. And morning, Will. All right, thanks for letting me know you can hear me okay. Good. It's always my big concern. Is everything working or not? So good to see everybody here. I mentioned, we're talking about waiting this morning, and I think that's always an apt discussion to have, because we always go through these times where it feels like we're waiting on something to happen, or we're waiting for God to do something, or we're waiting for direction from God. And waiting can be one of the hardest things. It starts as a child. When you're young, it seems like everything takes so long when you're waiting for it. That week before Christmas takes forever for Christmas to get there, right? As a child, and you flip that around, become an adult, it seems like Christmas is like, boom, it's here. Like, wait, I can use another few days to get my shopping done or get this wrapped or whatever. It seems to kind of come quickly, but it's all about perspective. But definitely feels like we're waiting. We wait in line. We wait for certain events to happen, for certain days to come. You may ever started off the week on Monday and said, I'm ready for Friday. That was me this past week. I was just ready to get the week over with, and kind of makes the week go by a lot slower when you're doing that. But we're going to look at our series in Noah. We're continuing on with what we're calling By Faith Noah, how to live in dangerous times. And we've looked at how Noah was obedient to God. He built the ark to God's specifications, how God called him into the ark. He entered in, put his trust in God, that God would protect him. We looked at that last week. And this week we're going to look at Genesis chapter 8 and at the interaction there of Noah with God. And so we're going to jump right into our scripture reading this morning. Hopefully my voice will hold out. I haven't been coughing this morning. So hopefully I make it with no cough drop and no coughing either one. But let's go ahead and jump right into our scripture reading this morning. We are in Genesis chapter 8. Beginning in verse 1, it says, And God remembered Noah and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually into the 9th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro, until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot. And she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her, and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again to him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the 2nd month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. Let's have a word of prayer. Dear Father, I pray that you would just use us this morning to speak to us, to encourage us, Lord, to challenge us as well. Lord, I pray that you would be with us this morning. We ask in your name. Amen. So we saw the story there of Noah. Last week we saw him get in the ark. God commanded him to get in. God brought all the animals, and then God shut the door. And then the rain started. 40 days, 40 nights, it rained, and the waters covered the earth. And then we see, chapter 8, verse 1 starts, and God remembered Noah. Now, I love that phrase. At first, it's kind of wait a minute. You're like, if you say somebody remembers something, it means they forgot something too, right? Like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's not exactly what that means. It means that he thought of Noah. Noah was on his mind. Noah was something that he was going to remember. You know, if you're like me and you have those things like, I really need to remember this, you try to find a way to remember it, right? You have the old putting a string on your finger thing, I guess, that you hear of in the past. I've never actually seen anybody do that, but you used to hear people talk about put a string on your finger to remember something. For me, I don't know if it'd work. I'd probably just like, what's the string for? I was supposed to remember something. And that's usually where I end up when I try to remember something. Is I get there and I'm like, oh, I was going to remember something, but I don't remember what it was I wanted to remember. And but we do things to try to remember it, right? If I need to remember something really, really important, like, okay, I don't want to forget that, I tell Christy. She's my way to remember things. Sometimes we write it down, right? Make our list. That's why we have so many people have all these notepads and things like that to write things down so we don't forget them. And that's kind of what that word remembered there means. It means to mark something. It means to. It's also translated as remember, to call to mind. And so it's saying that God, he made sure that Noah was on his mind. Noah was what he was thinking about. And so that's the beautiful part, to say that God didn't just put Noah in here and say, okay, I rescued mankind, he'll figure it out from here. No, God was working with Noah. He was still active in Noah's life at this point, and he's remembering him. He's thinking of him, and what's going to happen. And so it goes on to tell us that the waters, God brought a wind to come over. And wind in the scripture is often seen as a symbol of the Holy Spirit. When day of Pentecost came and the Holy Spirit came, we saw it come as a mighty wind. And so there's possibly some relation to that. But in either case, it said God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. So God decided when it started and when it stopped. And let's keep that in mind. God's always in control. God's always the one that can change anything he wishes to, and that's the case here. He goes on to tell us that that they went down, and after the end of 150 days, the waters were abated. Now, when you think about that, when you think of Noah being in the ark 40 days, 40 nights, but Noah was in the ark a lot longer than that. After the 40 days and 40 nights, it tells us there was another 150 days here for the water to start slowly going down. And that's a long time to be in this ark. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. Now, those mountains of Ararat, that's somewhere in the region of where Turkey would be today. And there's a mountain range there. And so it's somewhere in that area is where it rested. And it goes on to say, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. So even after the ark came to rest there in the mountains, there was still a lot of water on the earth. So it still wasn't habitable, still wasn't able to go out. They were just kind of in the upper part there, the higher region. So even after the 150 days, the ark finally stops moving, which I can imagine that might be a good thing too. If you've ever been on a boat and got a little bit of seasickness or feel the rocking of that, I can imagine after, what would that be, 190 days or so? What's that, a little over 6 months of being on the ark, probably moving around and rocking back and forth. It was probably a nice feeling for it to kind of lodge there somewhere in the mountains and kind of get some steadiness to it, even as the waters continue going down. And but it says, it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. I want you to notice, as we go through this, how much waiting Noah is doing. That's what stood out to me when I looked at chapter 8. It's just Noah waited and waited and waited. When we look at all the things, you'll see some more periods of delay here as we go through the rest of the chapter. He waited, he did this, and then he waited for this long, he did that, waited for that long. When you add it all up, Noah was in the ark right at 365 days. He was right in there, right at a year. We're told in Genesis 7, verses 11 and 13, that Noah went in on the second month in the 600th year of his life. And we're told that he came out the 27th day of the second month in the 601st year of his life. So he was in there right at an entire calendar year, amazingly, 365 days. So can you imagine, being in the ark with all these animals, unable to go anywhere for 365 days? Now, I would argue that those of us, listening to this, we're probably more capable of understanding that than even some generations before us, because what we've been through in the past few years, the COVID pandemic, and some of the times we had to spend kind of stuck at home, unable to go places, the things weren't open, really limited in our ability to go and do things, kind of showed us what it would be like. And most of us realized we couldn't even stay at home for 365 days without going crazy, much less inside of a large boat filled with animals that, oh, by the way, you have to take care of. So I think we can kind of get a glimpse of what it would be like based on what we've been through with the pandemic and all. But that's a long time to wait. Notice how long he's waiting. And waiting isn't unique to Noah. Even several of the psalmists talk about how they had to wait on God. In Psalm 13, one of the Psalms of David, he says, "How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? Forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me?" See, David here he's calling out to God. He's saying, "God, it feels like you've just forgotten me. It feels like you've moved on, and I'm still here waiting. I'm still here needing you." And he used the idea of God forgetting him, which we know God didn't. But he's saying, "How long will you hide your face from me? What am I waiting on, Lord? I'm waiting on you. I need you." Notice that the psalm, as you go to verse 5, it says, "But I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation." Even in that really open psalm, that the real personal psalm that he kind of admits, God, it feels like you've forgotten me. God, it feels like you're away from me. Even in all of that doubt and all of that questioning, he comes back at the end of that to say, "You know what? But I've trusted in thy mercy, and my heart will rejoice in your salvation." I'm putting my trust in you. That's what we have to do when we get to these times of waiting. Sometimes it may feel like God's far away, like he's just not answering, like he's just not giving us any information, and we're just having to wait. And even that time David felt like that. He says at the end, "But I can put my trust in who he is, in his mercy, and know that he's going to come to deliver me." Psalm 44. I believe this is one of the Psalms of Korra, from the sons of Korra. A psalm from the sons of Korra, if I can speak this morning. And here they say, "Awake, why sleepest thou, O Lord? Arise, cast us not off forever." They said, "Oh God, it's almost like you're asleep. It's almost like you've just gone to bed and forgotten about us." He says, "Wherefore hidest thou thy face and forgettest our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust, and our belly cleaveth unto the earth. Arise for our help, and redeem us for thy mercy's sake." They're calling out to God, saying, and if you read the rest of the psalm, it's a really long psalm, so I didn't include a lot of it. They're going back and saying, we've seen God work in the past. God did things, in the nation of Israel, and now, because of our sin, we're being oppressed by all these other countries and all these other nations, and they're calling out to God, saying, "God, when are you going to act on our behalf? We come back to you, and we're waiting for you." There's these times in our lives where we go through long periods, and we say, "You know what? I feel like I'm just waiting on this stage of my life to be over. I'm waiting on the next phase of my life, or I'm waiting on God to answer this prayer," whatever it may be. And we feel like, "God, where are you? What are you doing?" Just like these people, just like the sons of Korah here, just like David in the last psalm, we can know that God is working. Heard the illustration of a New England preacher back in the day named Philip Brooks. He was always noted for being very poised, have a quiet manner about himself. But every once in a while, he also had those times when he would kind of be, frustrated or irritable, and And it's told that one day when one of his friends saw him kind of just pacing back and forth, He's kind of walking back and forth and back and forth. And the friend said, what's the trouble? What's got you worried, Mr. Brooks? And he is reported to have responded saying, the trouble is that I'm in a hurry, but God isn't. Do you ever feel that way? Like, I'm in a hurry to get this done. I'm in a hurry to get to this next phase. I'm in a hurry to do this or to have that accomplished or move on. And then somebody, God's in such a big hurry. I can imagine Noah sitting there on the ark saying, you know what, I'm ready to get back to my life. I'm ready to get back to life on earth. I'm ready to get back to a normal life. We use that phrase all the time right now, get back to normal. That's what Noah was looking for. He wants to get back to normal, be back on dry land, be able to move around, have a life like he knew before the flood. And that's what feels like sometimes is we're ready to move on, and yet we're waiting for God. He's not in such a hurry. I love that story about the Philip Brooks there. It says, I'm in a hurry, but God isn't. Sometimes we have to wait on God. Going back to our passage here in Genesis chapter 8, it says, talking about Noah, he sent forth a raven which went forth to and fro till the waters were dried up from off the earth. So Noah sends out a raven to try to see what's going on out there. He sends the bird out, and that phrase where it says he went to and fro gives the implication that the bird probably would go out, come back to the boat, go out, come back to the boat, but he wouldn't come into the boat. Now, the raven was probably really enjoying this. Ravens, they feed off of flesh, and so he was very happy probably to go out. There's probably tons of dry rotting corpses out there for this raven to feast on, especially in the higher areas. As the water recedes, you would have things laying there, animals and such. So the raven's kind of going back and forth, and it says he went until the waters were dried up from off the earth. But it says Noah also sent a dove. The dove's different. The dove is not going to feed off of those dead bodies, and so the dove would go out, and he can't fly as far. He can't. He doesn't spend as much time in the air as the raven would, and so the dove will come back quickly if there's not anywhere for him to light, not anywhere for him to make a home. And so Noah's doing this testing. I think it's interesting that's what Noah's doing here. That he's actively checking on everything. He knows God's in control. He knows God's watching over him. But he's also at the same time saying, "Let me send this out and see how things are looking." Verse 9 says, "But the dove found no rest for her soul, and her foot returned to him. For the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her, pulled her in unto him in the ark." Unlike the raven, who pretty much stayed outside of the ark, by the time he was let out, the dove came back in each time. Noah would put his hand out, the dove would land, he'd bring her back in, and so that was the way Noah was checking on things. It's interesting to me that sometimes we wait on God, and we think, well, that means I just have to sit here and do nothing. That means I just have to kind of sit. Waiting is basically just sitting, but that's not always the case. In Noah's case, he was doing whatever he could. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 talks about how it's coming around the heels of that Hebrews 11 passage where it talks about the hall of faith, like we like to call it, where it talks about all the different characters from the Bible that had faith in God, and because of that were able to do mighty things. And Noah's even included in that hall of faith there in Hebrews 11. In Hebrews 12 it says, therefore being surrounded with so great a cloud of witnesses. In light of the fact that we've seen this happen with other people, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Sometimes waiting is about endurance. Sometimes it's about just continuing to push through whatever it is God's got you doing, whatever it is you're in the middle of. We often associate it with just kind of laying down, like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait. We think of waiting like going to get your driver's license renewed, or some of those places where you have these long lines. You have to kind of just sit there and wait and do nothing. But a lot of times it's more about continuing to work in the thing that God's given you. Say, okay, God, I'm going to keep doing what you've given me to do right here. Even though I'm ready to move on to the next phase. I'm ready for this to be over. I'm ready for what's next. But I'm going to keep doing what you've got me doing right now until you make the next change. So you show me what to do. I'm going to run the race with endurance. I'm going to continue on. That's what waiting can be about sometimes. It's to do good with courage. And that's where it gets really hard sometimes. Remember, Noah's not just sitting here waiting around. He's busy. He's cleaning cleaning up after the animals. He's feeding the animals. There's a lot of work to be done. You think about it. They were in the ark for about a year. Now, if there were 2 rabbits in there, think about how many rabbits they have by now. Rabbits are known to multiply pretty quickly. I can't even imagine how many rabbits there must have been. If they had cats in that ark, think about how many cats there are now. Some of the animals perhaps didn't have as many to reproduce during that year's time frame, but there's a lot more animals than they started off with, and Noah still got to feed them. He still got to clean up after them. Oh, and by the way, he's still living in a confined area with his relatives. And that's one of those challenges. Sometimes it can be it's great to visit with family sometimes, but then you put everybody into one place and leave them there for a long period of time, and things get tense, don't they? We start to get on each other's nerves. We're all used to having our own space and our own way of doing things. And can you imagine what it was like for Noah and his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives all packed into this place? They're still busy. They're still doing a whole lot while they're waiting. Life isn't on hold and stopping. They've got day-to-day tasks that they've got to get done, and that's what Noah's doing. He's working. He's continuing to do what God has given him to do. Verse 10 it says, "And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark." Again, it sounds like he's waiting, but there's a lot he's doing in those 7 days. He's still back to work. But then he comes back again and sends the dove out. And this time the dove brings an olive leaf plucked off. That kind of showed Noah that the waters were really going down. They had been down long enough for the tree to kind of branch back out. If you think about it, if it has a leaf on it, if that tree was submerged in water for going on right about a year, it would take a little time for that tree to put off some greenery there. Olive trees are known for being hard to kill, so it's not interesting. It's not surprising that the olive tree would be one of the first ones to start putting off greenery and start to thrive there. But that's God sent him that as a way of showing that he's working. Do we watch for those little things God does? Do we watch for the little, sometimes we're waiting on God to do something and we're missing all the little things that God gives us. All the little encouragement saying, you know what, I'm still doing something in your life. I'm still active in your life. I'm still at work. And that's what he was doing there with Noah, giving him this olive leaf that the dove brought back. It says that Noah knew the waters were made off the earth. For Noah, this probably felt like an endless pattern. We're gonna wait. We're gonna test it. We're gonna send out a bird. We're gonna get back. We're gonna wait. We're gonna test. We're gonna wait. It's kind of a cycle. It kind of feels like that sometimes in life. Like we're just do this and we're waiting on God. Do this and we're waiting. Our waiting isn't unique to us. Whatever you're going through, whether it's a season of your life, whether it's a challenge you've got going on, a health problem maybe, or a prayer request you've been praying for, whatever it is you're waiting on, that's something we share together. All of us have things that we're waiting on. If you look at the Bible, we see it over and over. Abraham waited 25 years from the time that God told him, you'll have a son, and through this son I'm going to make a mighty nation. 25 years later, Noah finally has that son. Joseph. You think about all he went through. His brothers sold him into slavery because they hated him so much. They were going to kill him. One of his brothers talked him into not killing him, but just sold him into slavery. Got carried down to Egypt. And then he starts to make a name for himself, kind of, starts to do okay as a servant there to Potiphar. And then he gets thrown in jail. And he sits there in jail for a little over 2 years before God finally brings him out and puts him in Pharaoh's house, and then, of course, brings him to a point of power and control there in the nation of Egypt. But he waited 2.5 years in prison. Can you imagine what Joseph is thinking? Okay, God, I don't know what you're doing here, but I really want to get to the next thing. I really want to move on from this. And that's how we feel so often. It's not unique to us. God continually works in people's life, and his time frames are not always our time frames. David waited 25 years from the time that he was anointed king by Samuel to the time he actually became king. Can you imagine that? Being told, here as a young boy, you're going to be the next king, and then you wait, and you're not, and you wait, and you're not, and you wait, and you're not. And we know from David's writings that David was waiting patiently. He had his chances to kill Saul at times. When Saul was after him to kill him, David could have killed him a few times. And David said, no, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. I'm going to let God work this out in God's timing. That's what we need to have, the same kind of faith to say, you know what, I'm going to let God work this out in God's timing. It's okay for us to be searching for things, sending out the doves, see what God's doing. Say, okay, God, I'm going to try some things and see if you're leading me in this direction. All that's good. We want to continue to work with what God's given us and continue to be busy. But we got to realize that sometimes God is at work and it takes longer than we want it to take. That God has continually worked in people's lives and taken longer than they wanted. Psalm 130, verse 5 says, I wait for the Lord, my soul doth wait, in his word do I hope. As I was thinking about Noah's ability here to sit and to wait for these waters to go down, to wait for his life to get back to normal, to wait to get off of this boat. One of the things that he was able to do to really make that possible was the fact that he knew who had put him there. You see, we don't see anything about Noah complaining. We don't see anything about Noah challenging God. There's no psalm from Noah saying, God, have you forgotten me? We don't see any of that. I think it's because God put Noah in the ark. Noah had already encountered God. He'd already seen God at work. He knew that God was the one in charge. That's what the psalmist here is saying, is that I wait for the Lord. My soul doth wait. In his word do I hope. We can put our hope in God's promises. When God says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, that's a promise you can hold on to in those times you're waiting. When God says he's going to work things out for the good of those that love him, we can hold on to that promise and say, God's working in my life. He's making something out of nothing. He's making something out of me. Isaiah 40, probably one of those common passages you would hear when you talk about waiting. And Isaiah there is talking about Israel's relationship with God. And he says, to whom then will you liken me? This is God speaking here in this passage. Or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things that bringeth out their host by number? He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might. For he is strong in power, no one faileth. Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speaketh, O Israel, my way is hid from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God? Hast thou not known? Hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary? There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fail. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That passage is saying that we need to look at who God is. And then these times when we're struggling, thinking, okay, God, I need you to change something. I need you to do something. I need this to end. I need something else to start. When we're waiting for that, we need to also stop and look at who God is. This is the God of the universe, the God that can change nations if he wants to, that can rise up a power and take it down if he chooses to do so. And we saw him do that during the time of Israel. He would raise up nations to punish Israel, and then he would bring those nations down when he was ready for someone else to take over. And that's the God that we serve. He says everyone's gonna struggle. He says, but also that's a God that gives power to the faint. You feel tired today? You feel worn out today? Do you feel just weary in whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is you're waiting for? He's going to give you power. And to them that have no might, he increases strength. You see, when we get our weakest is when God can be his strongest. And that's what he's saying here. We wait on the Lord. We shall mount up with wings as eagles. Notice that this it's flying, it's running, it's walking, whatever it is that we can do. Sometimes we achieve different things at different times. Sometimes the best we can do is walk. We can do that by him. Sometimes we're to run. We can do that by him. And sometimes we're just flying. Things are just screws. Those are the things God is going to bring us through when we wait on him. Back to Genesis chapter 8. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again to him. He's continuing this testing and waiting phase. He finally sends the dove out, and the dove doesn't come back. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Finally, when the dove doesn't come back, he knows, okay, the dove found enough ground to land to make a home. He didn't come back. She didn't come back. And he said, okay, so now let me take the door off and see what's going on out there. And he opens it up, and he sees dry ground. I don't know about you. I might be tempted to jump off the boat. Okay, let's go try this out. But he doesn't do that. In the second month, he waits another month. On the 7th and 20th day of the month, the earth was dried up. He's still waiting on God. He's looking at things, seeing progress. He's seeing what God's doing, but he's still waiting for God. That's the important thing for us. Sometimes we see God work. We see him begin to move. We say, okay, let's move on. Let's go ahead and do the next thing. Sometimes God's working. He wants us to watch him work, but to still be waiting for his instruction, for him to move us on. He wants to keep doing what we're doing until he gives us that next instruction there. By this time, we might have thought God had forgotten us. Kind of like Gideon. Angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. You remember the story? Gideon's out threshing wheat in the nighttime so that the enemy doesn't come in and steal it from him because he's so worried that he's gonna, they're going to come take away his stuff. And Gideon said unto him, talking to an angel here, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where are all his miracles which our father told us of, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us, delivered us into the hand of the Midianites. That's a sad statement, isn't it? Gideon's basically saying, no, I believe in God. I know he did great things for my forefathers, but God's forgotten me. God's forgotten us. He's moved on. He's not helping us anymore. He's left us here. You ever feel like that? Like God's just kind of left you there? Like you're waiting and you keep waiting for something and okay, God, where are you? Back to that psalm from David. Back to the psalm from the sons of Korra. God, what are you doing? That's what Gideon was saying. But you know what? God still used Gideon. Even in the midst of his doubt, even in that attitude he had of God's just forgotten all about us. The very next verse, the angel says, no, you're going to go and you're going to fight and you're going to do mighty things through my strength. And so God used him. And, Jeremiah also reminds us that we can rely on who God is. In the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, he says, it is the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. We saw this passage a few weeks ago. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore will I hope in him. The Lord is good unto them that wait for him, to the soul that seeketh him. You know, Noah could wait because of what we talked about last week. That God had closed the ark. That Noah knew who was controlling the situation. He knew he served a God that had great faithfulness. He knew that the Lord could be his portion. He could say, okay, I'm going to let God do whatever he wants to do, and I'll know that that's going to be best for me because I know who God is. I know God's the one that is protecting me. God's the one that has me. God is the one that is that I'm inside of. The one that is protected is my carrier. And so that's what the Lamentation, great is thy faithfulness. Psalm 27 says, I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage. He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Here the psalmist is, again, that same idea, waiting. Psalmist is saying, I had fainted. I would have already given up if I hadn't seen things that God has done. If I hadn't seen how good God was. I love that phrase, the goodness of God in the land of the living. God is good to us right here in the here and now. God is, He's waiting for you at the end of your struggle. You know, whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is you're waiting on, whatever it is that's got you concerned, God's waiting for you at the end of that. He's carrying you through that. And, there was a whole new world waiting for Noah. It was a brand new earth, rejuvenated, clean, ready to go, waiting on Noah. He just had to endure and get through to wait for that. Remember where we started? And God remembered Noah. God hasn't forgotten you. He's bringing you through whatever it is you're going through. Endure. Wait. Listen to what it says. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage. He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. I don't know what you're going through, what it is that came to mind when I mentioned having to wait. Whatever it is, God is with you during that. And God has something for you beyond that. And God is going to be the one to carry you through that. Our job is to wait. Yeah, it's an active waiting. It's continuing to do what God's given us to do, just like Noah still was doing what God told him to do, but he was waiting for God to say, okay, now it's time to move on. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage. He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Love you all. Hope that's an encouragement to you this week. As you go out, look at your life and say, what is it I'm waiting on, and how can I make sure that I'm focused on letting God do what he's doing? Instead of me getting in a hurry, instead of me rushing forward, let God do what he's doing. I love that song, Great is Thy Faithfulness. That's what this passage is saying. God is a great God. He's going to carry you through what you're going through. Just like Noah, you may be sitting there going, okay, I'm counting off the days. It's going by longer and longer and longer. God, I don't see you working. He will work on your behalf. He is working on your behalf. Wait on the Lord. Love you all. I hope you have a great week. Did want to make an announcement. We are not going to have Sunday Fun Day this evening at 6 o'clock. We'll resume next Sunday. But did want to let you know that. And then I hope to see you next Sunday again as well for our online service here. If I can be of any help to you this week, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Give me a call, a text message, a phone call, whatever works best for you. And have a great week. I love you all. If you're watching this video and you don't know who New Hebrew Missionary Baptist Church is, we're a small country church on the east side of West Blockton, Alabama. If you're familiar with West Blockton area and you know where the baseball fields are, you can turn left right there onto Bishop Ridge Road. Go about 5.5 miles. You'll see our sign. You can turn left onto Griffintown Road. Go up the hill around the bend. You'll see our sign, the 3 crosses, and our sanctuary there nestled in the woods. We currently have services online here on YouTube and Facebook at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. We have an on-site service there in our sanctuary at 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And we usually have Sunday Fun Day, a time of game and Bible study, online at 6 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube on Sundays. You can find out more information about us, newhebrewbaptist.com. You can send us an email, contact us through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever your favorite way to communicate is. We'd love to hear from you.